Battle of Uhud, 625 CE, was one of the most pivotal and tragic events in early Islamic history. It was fought between the Muslims of Medina, led by Prophet Muhammad, and the Quraysh of Mecca, who sought revenge after their defeat at the Battle of Badr. The battle took place in the Valley of Uhud, near Medina, and was marked by both initial success and eventual defeat for the Muslims. After the Battle of Badr, 624 CE, where the Muslims achieved a decisive victory over the Quraysh, the leaders of the Quraysh were humiliated and vowed revenge. The Quraysh's defeat at Badr not only resulted in the loss of key leaders, but also significantly damaged their pride and influence. To avenge their defeat, they gathered a much larger army of about 3,000 soldiers, a mix of infantry, cavalry, and archers, and marched toward Medina. The Prophet Muhammad, who had been receiving intelligence about the Quraysh's plans, decided to confront them outside Medina, instead of allowing them to lay siege to the city. He chose the Valley of Uhud as the site for the battle, which was located about 5 kilometers north of Medina and surrounded by rocky hills, providing a natural defense. The Muslim army consisted of around 700 soldiers, including archers, infantry, and a few cavalry. Despite being outnumbered, the Muslims were confident in their faith and preparation. The Prophet Muhammad led them, accompanied by his companions, with a clear goal: to protect Medina and defend Islam from the aggression of the Quraysh. The Muslims positioned themselves at the foot of Mount Uhud, with the hill providing some strategic protection on their right flank. The Prophet Muhammad also stationed a group of 50 archers on a small hill near the battlefield, with orders to prevent the Quraysh from using their cavalry to encircle and attack the Muslim forces from the rear. The battle begins. The two armies met in the Valley of Uhud. Initially, the battle seemed to favor the Muslims. The Quraysh forces, despite their superior numbers, struggled to gain the upper hand. The Muslims were able to inflict heavy casualties on the Quraysh, and their initial momentum made it appear as though victory was within reach. However, the situation changed dramatically due to a critical mistake made by a group of Muslim archers. The Prophet Muhammad had specifically ordered the archers on the hill to remain in their positions and not leave under any circumstances, even if they saw the Muslims winning. Their role was crucial. By maintaining their position, they could stop any potential attack from the Quraysh cavalry on the Muslim rear. As the battle raged on and the Muslims appeared to be winning, some of the archers, seeing the Quraysh forces retreating, decided to leave their posts in pursuit of the spoils of war. They left the hill, thinking the battle was essentially over. This left the rear of the Muslim army unprotected. Seizing the opportunity, Khalid ibn al-Walid, who was leading the Quraysh cavalry, quickly maneuvered his forces around the hill and attacked the now vulnerable Muslim flank. The cavalry came down on the Muslims with full force, turning the tide of the battle. As the Quraysh cavalry attacked from the rear, confusion spread through the Muslim ranks. The Muslims were caught between the Quraysh infantry in front and the cavalry from behind. The battle became chaotic, and many Muslims were forced to retreat to the hills. During this confusion, the Prophet Muhammad himself was struck and wounded, and rumors spread that he had been killed. This severely affected the morale of the Muslim forces. However, the Prophet Muhammad was alive and continued to lead the remaining Muslims despite his injuries. The Quraysh, now having the upper hand, pressed their attack. They inflicted heavy losses on the Muslim forces, killing many of the Prophet's companions, including Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet's uncle, who was martyred in the battle. Despite their victory on the battlefield, the Quraysh could not claim a total victory. They were unable to capture or kill the Prophet Muhammad, and they eventually withdrew from the battlefield. Aftermath and lessons. The Battle of Uhud ended in a Pyrrhic victory for the Quraysh. Although they inflicted heavy losses on the Muslims, they were unable to wipe out the Muslim community or destroy Islam. The battle had significant consequences for both sides. For the Muslims, moral and spiritual loss. The battle was a bitter reminder of the dangers of disobedience and the importance of following the Prophet's commands. The mistake made by the archers led to unnecessary casualties, and the loss of Hamza, a key figure in the Muslim community, was a major blow. Strategic setback. Despite the defeat, the Muslims retained control over Medina and were not decisively crushed. The battle underscored the importance of unity, discipline, and the strategic role of leadership in warfare. For the Quraysh, psychological victory. The Quraysh were able to restore their pride after their humiliating defeat at Badr. However, their victory was not complete. They were unable to destroy the Muslims as they had hoped, and they failed to capture or kill the Prophet Muhammad. While they inflicted casualties, the Quraysh could not capitalize on their success. They did not pursue the Muslim forces into Medina, which allowed the Muslims to regroup and prepare for future challenges.